What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video on Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin, which is a real-time strategy game brought to us by Frontier Developments. Though right here at the beginning of this video, I do need to inform you that this is in fact sponsored by Frontier Developments, the game's publisher and developer, and if you like what you see over the course of this video, there will be a link in the description below where you can check it out and learn more for yourself. With that out of the way though, Realms of Ruin is launching with a variety of features, such as a cinematic single-player campaign focusing on the game's 4 factions, a multiplayer mode that comes with ranked, co-op, 1v1, 2v2, cross-platform support, so a lot to talk about there. But then we also have the game's conquest mode, a sort of procedurally generated campaign that introduces some roguelike elements, and still even more features such as the army livery, allowing you to customize your individual units and their paint jobs in typical tabletop fashion, alongside things like a map editor and a scene editor. So over the course of the video, I want to break a lot of that stuff down. But let's start with the single-player campaign and how an individual chapter or mission might play to get you familiar with the gameplay mechanics. The campaign puts us in the role of the Stormcast Eternals as they make their way into the Realm of Beasts, or Gur, where they are soon beset upon by things like Orc Cruel Boys and the Night Haunt. And later on, you can even encounter the Disciples of Tzeentch, which comprise the game's main factions. The Stormcast Eternals are well-rounded, coming with a good variety of units that have the ability to focus on melee, defense, ranged, special abilities, just kind of a well-rounded faction. And then we have the Orc Cruel Boys. The Orcs, as you might suspect, focus a lot on overwhelming the enemy via their melee might. While they don't have much in the way of defense, they do have disruptive abilities that can give them an edge in combat specifically, befitting what you might expect from Orcs. The Night Haunt, the undead faction, are all about numbers and fear. While individually, none of them are particularly strong, they often come in large groups, allowing you to overwhelm your enemy with numbers. And then finally, the Disciples of Tzeentch are all about the ranged offensive magic, which isn't the only thing they do, of course, as all of the factions come with a variety of units, both big and small, that comprise the bulk of their forces. That is to say, each of them plays a little differently, and alongside hero units, which have their own special abilities, it can make for some pretty interesting gameplay. Personally, my favorite was the fire-breathing dragon, naturally, though as a faction I more enjoyed the Night Haunt. When you're actually in a match, however, much of what you're doing is going to be trying to control outposts and arcane conduits, while taking the fight to the enemy. Your outpost serves as your main base. It's where you will spawn your units, and as you collect resources from arcane conduits and rank up your outpost, you'll get better units, better upgrades, which brings us to the arcane conduits. These are checkpoints, more or less, on the map that once you control, you can build specific types of arcane conduits that can then help you gather resources, those resources being command and realm stone. Just about everything in the game requires one of those 2 resources to help you spawn your units, upgrade their various abilities, and upgrade your outpost as well, giving you access to better units and upgrades. Now, where it gets especially fun is, in addition to upgrading your individual units and assigning them to combat, a lot of the units, as you're controlling them, will have individual abilities unique to them. This can be simple things like the Vanguard Hunter's ability to more or less cloak themselves and pass through an area undetected, or more damaging abilities like the Dragon's Fire Breath, whereas hero units might even have things that are more substantial, like a sustained AoE heal, for instance. And those abilities, combined with the composition of your units and battalions, which are combinations of many units, is going to dictate your tactics and strategy as you fight off the enemy. As you move through the campaign, you'll be taking on various chapters which comprise your missions, and these individual chapters each have challenges associated with them, and once you've completed them, you can go back and replay any chapter you've already done to try to tackle those individual challenges. So there's a good bit of single-player content before we even start talking about the conquest mode. Conquest mode is a procedurally generated campaign. You'll be put on this map where your goal is to move towards the Warlord. And these you can play through as any of the factions. You can customize the difficulty, which changes your starting lives or how many battles you're allowed to fail, basically, alongside the paint job of your units. But along this map, you'll take on individual missions, fighting your enemies as you go, which increases your score with a multiplier based on the difficulty. And some of the individual battles you can have here will have special modifiers that change things even further. So if you're looking for a little something extra to do, Conquest might just be for you. In a few places though, I've referenced customizing our factions or units paint job and how that works. So if you go to the army livery portion of the menus of the game, you can customize a paint job for your units. Now there are a few presets you can pick from, but if you wish, you can go in and customize it for yourself in a way reminiscent of painting minis. And while you can do this at a large army level, kind of giving an individual faction a paint job, you can also go in on the unit level and customize specific units color pattern. So each different unit in your faction might look a little different, for instance. But if you don't want to play any of the single player campaign or the conquest mode and would prefer to stick to community creations or make something of your own, that's where the map editor and scene editor comes in. It's possible to enter a map editor, make your own individual battles, set them up for 1v1 or 2v2. And while you'll initially set some basics like the map size, the game mode, the general biome and surrounding area, once you get into the actual editor, you'll have the ability to adjust terrain, place objects, place starting points, units. And while there are some minimums, of course, to make it a playable map, you're also largely free to customize these as you please. And what's more, you'll be able to browse community creations and see what other people have contributed and made to this, which will add some even more customizable content to the mix. And that's all before we even start talking about the multiplayer. Now, I didn't have a ton of chance to mess with this myself personally, so I'm unable to demonstrate a game, but the mode itself will have a ranked competitive mode where you can directly compete with other players. It's also going to have cross-platform functionality, allowing you to play with your friends on other platforms. And you can do this in either 1v1 or 2v2 methods, and if you would prefer just a nice co-op mission, you can also do that. You can play co-op with other friends as well. So it looks like they've got all their bases covered in terms of the multiplayer aspect of things. So as you can see from this video, I would say Realms of Ruin has a variety of content, and given that we don't get a ton of real-time strategy games these days, it's nice to see one come out with all of these features right out of the gate. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, remember there's a link down in the description below where you can check it out for yourself, but that is pretty much going to do it for this video. So I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.